Click the button. It's going to take a couple of minutes.
Wow, your energy is really good, Todd.
Yeah?
Yeah, you feel great.
You can't tell with all the third eye DNA activations going up in my head.
Mhm.
I know it sounds crazy, but there is a physicality to this whole thing, isn't there?
Yeah.
Let me turn this damn thing off. So, yeah. What's going on? Life? Yeah. No
Yeah.
doubt. No doubt. No doubt at all. It's been a hell of a ride so far in 2022. 2 people in the house.
Will you tag me in this, Todd?
Yeah, I can do that right now.
Thank you, please.
All right, let's see. Missee Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Edit post. All right. There we go. Done. Boom. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, it's a Saturday. Soul Speaks. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about.
Yeah. What are we going to talk about?
I don't know.
Me neither. Let's just go with it.
Yeah, we got 28 people in the house. We can go with it. Yeah, so like, what's been happening? I hadn't seen you. I think we did a show after Soulogy Fest, maybe 1 or 2, and then I don't really, like I said, I go through the news feed and look for posts to share in the Soulogy group, and so I pick up people's energy. I don't remember the specific posts, but I remember seeing you. It looked like you were in a bathroom and you were shooting a picture from the ceiling down or something. I don't know what that was, but it was pretty cool.
Well, I was in an elevator.
It was an elevator. Okay. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, it'd be pretty. That wouldn't be too cool to have a mirror on the ceiling in the bathroom. So I know you're always an open book like me, and you're always in the trenches, and you're always very open about what's happening. I don't know. A lot of people have come on, and I know my own experience. October the 10th seemed like somebody shot a starter gun, a starter pistol, and we were off to the races in October, and November, December, January, and even here in February. There's just been these waves of. They feel like purification might be overused, but purging in preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing actually homeless outreach for a job right now.
Far out.
Yeah. And it's really interesting just to be out there on the streets with like vulnerable populations, and just really seeing firsthand what humanity is going through,
Yeah, that speaks to my heart. I was homeless for 2 years, and as I was awakening.
Me too.
Yeah, I know we have a lot in common. We do. A lot in common. And yeah, there's, I saw, what did I see today? Or maybe I was downloading it because I had a bunch of lucid dreams last night, or reading it. But it was basically, the message was, well, I know what it was. Something not triggered me, but not in a bad way, but just kind of inspired me. So I was halfway in the flow and I started to write something. And it was kind of like a satirical kind of, but you never know what's going on. So let's check ourselves. So it was kind of like, hey, how do we know in the metaphorical sense, or for all we know in the literal sense, that we are the fallen ones they always talk about, and that our only way out is to be truly unified and in oneness from the center of our heart, period. There's no in between. And it has nothing to do with anybody else, but it does in the macro and the micro, within, without. And like, that's really what it's all about. So, being on the streets, doing the kind of work you're doing, I know for me, it was a real eye opener. It wasn't a mistake that I arranged it to be homeless the first 2 years that I was awakening. And, but to meet the people was a real eye opener, because I'd been around a little bit, as you know, as you have. And I've, and that gives you more colors to paint from your palette. But some of the people were so far out there. that, you know, I had no other choice but to look at them as a soul
Yeah.
from the soul perspective. And then other people were like geniuses, and other people were just, and they all had these stories. Like
Yep.
I think of a Iraqi vet sleeping under the bridge that I met one night. I think of a guy that was he was kind of, I guess, affluent, because in Houston, there's a pretty considerable oil presence, oil and gas. So he came from a pretty wealthy neighborhood, and he just walked out of the house one day. Like he must have been like 25, like an older, you're living at home, and just left and went homeless for 9 years. A lady picked him up and took him home, bathed him, and they lived together for 11 years. He had left the first time because his wife died.
Yep. It's
And he
trauma.
went, yeah, and then he went homeless. And then this lady picked him up, took him home, gave him a bath. They stayed together 11 years. She dies.
Yeah.
And he went right back to the streets. And I
Mhm.
met him in rehab. And, but,
Mm.
these stories are, I mean, do we really, we say we're empaths, but do we really, how far do we take it? How deep do we go? Do we still have frequencies of separation? Can we do better? Can we stay in our own lane?
Mhm.
Especially the way things are moving, because what the universe asks of you today is less than it will ask of you tomorrow, and rightfully so.
Hmm.
Always
Let's
expanding, which is the universe.
Hmm.
So what have you been doing? What's happening? You've been working with the homeless people, and what's that done for you? What's going on with that? How are you feeling?
Hmm. I like working on like front lines work like I'm doing right now for the experience of it.
Yeah,
I like to help people like in my own containers with people to further along in their sobriety, to drop the identity and to do some healing of the trauma. But for me to work with people on the front lines who are like on the streets, living in camps, living under bridges,
yeah,
it's good for me and my healing journey
yeah.
to show up in non-judgment of that. I've also been doing like some needle exchange outreach too,
Mm,
is amazingly healing for me. I actually did a naloxone training, which is, the medication they give people who are overdosing on heroin to come out of
okay,
it.
right.
I did a training of that 6 months ago online and got triggered into a PTSD response.
Wow,
And now
wow.
I'm doing homeless outreach with needle exchange, and I'm just neutral and having so much fun doing it. So there's a lot of growth there for me if I do my work, if I
Well,
clean stuff up.
I've heard, and this is not to knock anybody, but I've heard, obviously, 3,200 shows. I've had a lot of practitioners on here. In fact, probably most of the people are, because more and more people are a practitioner in some sense or another. But I've never heard one come in and say what you just said, which is, and I'll just put it in my words, but I'm approaching these sessions because you're initiating
Mhm.
healing intent. So, and you're open, your field is open. But I've never heard someone say what I'm hearing you say, which is I actually go into this to heal and be healed,
Yep. Mhm.
which is pretty cool. That's a Trinity energy, it's a Trinity energy.
To hold space of non-judgment and acceptance,
Yeah.
you know? I
Yeah.
tried to separate myself from the homeless community when I got off the streets 4 years ago, and I tried to separate myself from people who use drugs,
Yeah.
and I'm around people who use drugs every day, and I go to these recovery meetings all over the city, and I help facilitate some of them as well in rescue missions and homeless shelters, and, you know, um, there's, like, this element of uncomfortability in them because, people are in psychosis, they're high, they hijack
Yeah.
the meeting and they share inappropriate things, it's I love it. I love it. I love to sit there and be uncomfortable and to see the real humanity in people, as they're slowly waking up. People are slowly waking up.
Yeah. You know, some of the conversations I had when I was on the street with people,
Mhm.
because obviously I had just awakened. So you know how when you just awaken, you're like, hey, guess what's happening in the world? But one of the things that was really interesting, you just made me remember it because I hadn't even thought about it, was their explanation.
Mm.
Like their explanation was just like, sometimes it would just like, knock me on my heels. I'd be like, holy crap. Like the way they would see things, the way they were basically embodied, regardless of the extent of what the society might think they are or not, the
Mm.
way they had it figured. And I'm talking, because there was a lot of people released in the US, I think it was in the late 90s when they kind of pulled back the government funding for mental health. And a lot of people that were in we'll just say psychiatric hospitals, they were released. There was a whole giant wave of them. I met a lot of them. But
Ah.
so whether it was those type of people or even addicts,
Mm.
I've had some conversations with addicts. I don't care what people think about this.
Mm.
These people were absolutely, there's a fine line, as they say, between genius and insanity. I mean, these people were like on it spiritually. I mean, they got it. And their experiences with, let's just say, non-physical or other dimensional
Exactly.
energies actually helped me a lot because I was going through really daily experiences and I was using part of the time.
Mhm.
But it validated things for me. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. You know?
Yeah, I've had many psychotic breaks is what you would call it,
Hmm.
tapping into other realities that aren't happening in this reality and experiencing them as real while on drugs or detoxing. And actually, those experiences, as horrific and traumatizing as they were, and I have to actually do the healing work in this timeline to clean those up, which is really interesting
Hmm.
work. Um, it helped me so much in my ability to access information and to understand multidimensionality across the omniverse, and
Right.
not just a concept, but like I can really understand it, you know?
Yeah. And it makes you understand. I mean, I had a family member that was challenged with, labeled by, science or whatever, was schizophrenia
Mhm.
and chronic depression. But that was really that 10 or 11 years I spent with them was really kind of a window into what is the other side, because I started to realize first in that relationship, and then when I hit the street, I started to realize what these people's realities were.
Yeah.
And their realities were actually things we talk about here.
Mhm.
I see angels.
Exactly.
I got visited by little green men. And
Mhm.
so you're like, okay, maybe the reason these people have the challenge they have to be human is no different than a lot of what light workers say. I'm not from here, and so
Exactly.
on. But theirs is just more exacerbated.
And
Uh,
ungrounded.
yeah, I mean, because they're the odd ones out, and their let's just say their interaction with that type of experience is far more frequent than, say, your typical light worker, even.
Yeah, and they're also a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people are also taking drugs,
Hmm.
which, tears holes in their field, allows
Hmm.
entities to come in, it shoots their consciousness God knows where, and they
Yeah.
have to find their way back from that. And then
Right.
as we expand naturally, we hit up against the ridges of wherever we shot out to, and we have to deal with all that dissonance later on in sobriety, which is a trip.
That's right. And I don't think a lot of people understand. When I think about addiction, as time's gone on, I realize that it's not just alcohol or drugs or sex, and I've done them all to that, what I would say, level of addiction.
Mhm.
But shopping for people, different things, just different behavioral patterns. What I noticed in myself, which took me quite some time to really get past the PTSD, get past the self judgment. And I've been clean with this in my own mind for quite a while, like probably probably really clean, probably a year to 2 years. And that is just the whole trigger. That when I say trigger, I'm talking about what happens to the body. Like there's a particular type of drug that even to this day, even Todd, he is today, if I got around it, I would first of all have this, urge. I wouldn't say I'd do it, but I'd be like, oh man, I remember that. But the thing that I was bringing up is that if that were to happen, when that happened, and that could be, again, it doesn't have to be a pharmaceutical, it doesn't have to be a drug, it doesn't have to be alcohol, it can be other things, it can be sex. I think that's probably the number one thing, in my opinion. But what happens is your body, in my words, you immediately turn into another person who has these certain, proclivities to do only these things when I would be in this state, because it is an alteration of your consciousness. Now the thing that made me kind of come to terms with this is that I can remember very distinctly the entire time, pretty much, that voice that never leaves, the one that always listens and now it's trying to do the talking, was always there. Like I can remember saying to myself when I was using, hey, you're fucked up, dude. You need to leave. You need to go be somewhere by yourself. You need to, you know what I mean? Like I can remember hearing that voice regardless of the level of, intoxication or inebriation that I was under.
There was always truth in the midst of all of the chaos.
Yeah.
And I had that voice too. I went through the 12 steps to get sober. And in some of those meetings, there's these readings that they would read that said, like, some of us believed we would use until the day we died. And I would always think, that's not me. No matter how chaotic it was, if I was in a mental institution, if I was in jail, if I was homeless, if I had just overdosed and was in the hospital or whatever, I always knew that it wouldn't last. I always knew it.
Yeah.
There was always that voice that was like, this is not your fate. This is just a blip in the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I always knew it. I remember thinking, one day I'll be healthy. One day. It makes me feel emotional. I thought, like, as far as I could see was like this version of me who was like active, like going to the gym and doing yoga. And that was like as far ahead as I could see. Like just one day I'm going to be this person who's healthy, And like I'm sitting here today, like doing those things and so much more, And now it's like this journey of self-forgiveness for all the lost time. Like I'm 38 years old and there's pieces of me that were stunted in my growth at 23 when I first discovered heroin. I didn't grow emotionally from there in a lot of ways. And now I'm going back and learning how to be an adult for the first time, which is like, really humbling.
Is there static on my end or her end?
There's static on her end, I think.
Oh, on my end? Damn, I think it's, I had the heater going on in here, which creates humidity.
Oh, there's a whole thing involved.
Well, I just noticed it. Yeah,
Okay.
what you said. Yeah, and and I'm not saying that I'm totally there. I think there's an issue on your end in the sound. Let me try something else here. Hang on. Huh. Well, let's see here.
Sounds good right now.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But like, to me, like the whole addiction thing just is a copy of the whole Ascension thing, right? It's just a different route, and the same patterns are there. The distraction, the unconscious programming. Okay, it's better now. All right. And
You sound great.
You can't lie to yourself. I mean, you can say, I'm okay. I'm not an addict anymore. Or, I'm okay. I don't do that anymore, or whatever. But what I realized over the
Mhm.
years was, it's all about feeling, and of course the PTSD is a reminder. But um, to get to a point where I can actually talk about it, I don't have any. And I'm just saying, look, I'm 60. All right, you're 30s. All right, so I mean, I'm not saying anything's a right path or a wrong path. All I'm saying is, that there's real progress when you can actually talk about it, and
Mhm.
I felt a sense of satisfaction, achievement, something like I valued it totally differently than I ever had, and I was unaffected. The self-judgment had kind of gone, but it took a long time, and I think the process itself is the real gold. That's the real goal, because it drives you to do things like you said, to heal yourself. And what better way to do it than to serve yourself, serve your brother, sister,
Mhm.
while equally serving the collective. That's where the new code is created for others
Yeah.
in the moment.
It creates a template for other people to follow, even if it's just energetically and they're not conscious of it. There's another way that's shown,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, I got, and it's another thing too, because when you're on the street, as you know, there's a level of self-preservation
Mhm.
that you have to tap into. Otherwise, you'll get eaten alive. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? And so you learn to focus on your energy, regardless of what level of recovery you're in, right? And it's so funny because I don't really comment much on social media. I just put posts out and do what I do. And so there's this dude in the Soulogy group, and he's always playing the antagonist, right? Like, and I don't know what got into me today, but it was all perfect. And I just put on there because I'd put something about uh, people that are not buying into the program. Basically, I don't
Mhm.
remember the exact meme, and uh, he said something like, "Yeah, well, that's the program that you think you're not on a program," or something. I don't know what he said, but he always comes in and says these things. And so I wrote back and I said, "Well, you call it intuition, telepathy, and soul fucking common sense," which I hadn't put something out, and that was charged, and I admit it. But the funny thing was, and this is how the universal energy is working now. The next thing you know, I see a meme, and it says, it's a badass picture. I shared it in Soulogy, and it says, uh, "Don't be worrying about what I'm doing. Worry about why you're worried about what I'm doing."
Yeah.
And I thought, oh shit, that was a big slap in the face, because I just did the same thing, and all I could do was laugh about it.
Mhm.
You know, it's there if we see it, if we want to see it.
There will always be a mirror to show you where you are.
Yeah, yeah.
Have no worry. One will show up.
Yeah, one thing about, and I would never recommend this to anybody, the lifestyle that we're reviewing.
Mm.
But again, going through it, and everybody has their own experiences proportionate to their life experience, in terms of uh, the extremes of polarity. um, and I had some incredible light experiences in that period, with intent, with intention. Like if I would go off by myself and really just hone in, but there were many times that didn't happen. And this is the other part of what I'm saying: the dark energies
Mm.
are, it's not always about our better angels. It's about our dark angels, and and they are just as valuable.
Mhm.
And so I would have these extreme experiences with apparitions, with different things in
Mhm.
that ground, in that space in between, where you don't know if you're actually seeing something or you're not. And
Or what reality you're in, really.
yeah, which the bottom line is, it's energy being presented to you, and you can get into some really extreme dimensional space, let's just say,
Mhm.
which again, I look back now and I go, man, that was some ballsy stuff, dude. I mean, not to like give yourself a pat on the back for that, but just to see from a soul level how you picked up as much space in between the poles as possible to learn to discern and expand.
Yeah. The thing that was the game changer for me in all of this was really remembering that I chose this all myself before I came here.
Yeah,
Like, this wasn't done to me. This is something that I designed for myself and agreed to and came in to live, you know?
yeah,
And so all of those dark entities, like, I hired them myself to come and to play that part.
that's right.
All of the angels, all of the protectors, the spiritual support team that I still have, which is massive, I hired them to do this with me. And I have just as many entities. I still have a lot of entities that work on me. I've had 2 relapse dreams this week, you know?
Really.
Oh, yeah. Where I'll go right back into that dark timeline and experience everything as it's actually happening again. I don't know how long that will continue for me, but it's definitely still a thing.
Well, those experiences. I mean, I have a lot of lucid dreams. I had some pretty powerful ones last night. But to me, it feels like, um, I guess, in a way, like doing shadow work or a process of zero pointing
Mhm.
in in that type of way, rather than not to say one's better than the other. I'm just saying I can see. Like, I remember like a week and a half ago having 3 lucid dream nights and 4 out of 4 nights, and just every day knowing what just happened, like within myself, like what just happened, like this distorted masculine just got put to bed, and and then the next one, and then the next one, because there's been some massive transformational energies and experiences occurring all over the earth. I mean, all you got to do is look at Canberra or Ottawa.
Mm,
I mean, that's not some propaganda groundswell being portrayed. That's just like pure soul, which is really cool.
it is really cool. Yeah.
So are you still down the road going to go to Costa Rica? Are you going to be working with these folks for a while?
Yeah. So my intention is to go to Costa Rica in about a year from now. Yeah, I feel like I'm right where I need to be. I want to start either a nonprofit or a social enterprise or B Corp myself. And right now, with the organization that I work for, they give me a lot of freedom and resources to go and explore different nonprofits all over the city and just
Really?
go and see what they do. And so I'm just exploring, what is it that I want to do? What flavor of healing and addiction recovery do I want to bring to the world, you know?
Have you?
Something in addiction recovery, like diversity, something
Right.
about the diversity of it, yeah.
Have you have you come across a couple of nonprofits that kind of impress you? I mean, are you seeing anything unique or anything you didn't know about?
I'm seeing some really cool stuff. This next week, I'm going to shadow at a place in Salt Lake City called Flourish Bakery, which has it's a bakery with a 1-year internship, paid internship for people who are repeat offenders and have like a lot of charges, have a hard time getting hired places, and who have addiction issues, to help them transform their lives, clean up their records, and to get a trade. And it's like this whole community. Um, it's really quite beautiful.
Well,
There's this thing in Salt Lake or in Utah that just passed called the Utah Clean Slate Act. And if you're off paper for 5 years, now all of your charges will just expunge naturally. So
that's pretty cool. That's
I'm
pretty
actually
cool.
still paying on some court fees and some jail fees. But once those are cleaned up, all of my charges will be gone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
That's awesome.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, and there's another side to it too. I mean, I think, and again, as within, without, but like, I know that I think it's still a fact. I mean, that there's more people incarcerated for marijuana in the country than the more severe crimes. I know this was true 2, 3 years ago.
I don't know if that's still true now.
They may not. They released a lot of people, especially with the COVID thing. But
Yeah.
my point is that we know the pharmaceuticals are responsible for. They're the biggest drug dealer. We know the CIA deal drugs, and we
Mhm.
know they brought them into the crack, brought that in, transported cocaine.
Yeah.
So I mean, like there's it's both the micro and the macro. But I think again that environment to me was like an intense, kind of like almost like a boot camp of what we call ascension or growing up.
Mm.
Um, and the point being that there are many people more every day, like you said, that are waking up, becoming self-reliant, becoming responsible co-creators, whether they're consciously intending that or not, that are affecting our collective experience. And I think the same thing will happen in that arena, where you'll start to have the type of approach you're talking about, where
Mm.
instead of you got 5 years parole and don't do this and all that, but actually taking a constructive, let's rebuild this person's life with compassion and
Yeah.
humanity.
So amazing. I like the idea of a social enterprise myself
Mm,
because as like somebody who is in addiction, I expected a lot. Like I expected shit for free. I always wanted to take energy and take things. I wanted, to be on government assistance and all this stuff all the time. In a social enterprise, they do accept like government grants and donations, but they run mostly as a business, self-generating their own money.
right, right.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting in Utah, they just had a conversation about having safe using sites where people can shoot up heroin here with like paramedics right there, clean using utensils, safe using kits. And I think it'll be some time before that's passed, but it's still something that's really cool to be a part of and
Yeah,
to, you know, watch happen and unfold in the city here. We have a massive homelessness issue here, a lot of drug addiction. I could
mm,
walk out my front building and see, you know,
wow,
half the people will be homeless or on drugs that I would.
wow.
But I'm right downtown also. Um, but it's just really cool to be a part of like the needle exchange, the harm reduction, and that's what I have a lot of passion for. I'm finding.
Yeah,
Well, there's places here that are doing like microdosing to help heal PTSD, which I'm fully sober, but I am open to support people however they want to heal.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for um, plant medicine. um, I mean, it's I wouldn't do it again.
I would.
I've had my fill, but
Mhm.
you look at some of the studies with the
Yeah,
psilocybin, and
yeah.
it's microdosing is
Ketamine's a huge one. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I mean, because we got to remember that's a consciousness. You
It's an
know,
entity.
it's yeah. I mean, like if you actually approach psilocybin mushrooms
Mhm.
from the standpoint that you might, let's just say, trying to initiate interaction with a higher aspect or a multidimensional aspect of yourself or whatever, you treat it as a consciousness. You treat it with respect and honor, and you kind of engage it, and it can be very enlightening. But I mean, it's like you said, there's so many different ways to go, and
There's so many different
you
ways
know,
to go. For me, like to help heal the lower dimensions of 3D trauma and
mm,
PTSD with an entity to help them to, stabilize in the fourth dimension makes sense.
mm,
But for me, as somebody who's, working on fifth dimensional ascension,
mm-hmm,
not that I'm there, but I work towards that. I don't want to bring an entity in. An entity can't take me to the fifth dimension.
mm,
It can help pull you out from 3 to 4 and stabilize, but it cannot take you to the fifth. You
yeah,
have to have your own divinity bring you there. You have to be in your own.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't take anything with us. Anything
No
that's
other entity can make that happen.
but there are things that get you to a certain point, and at some point you just you outgrow it. Like I said,
Exactly.
I'm not.
Exactly.
It for me, because I would have to say most of my uh, experience with hallucinogens, mushrooms. This goes back to when I was a kid,
Me too.
and right up till, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But most of the time, especially as I got older, especially I got into my mid-20s, and, and I really kind of didn't do anything for about 10 years. But I approached it from with the intent of expansion in some way or another. And,
Mm.
sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I had my fill of psychedelics before I even turned 18.
Wow.
My first, psychedelic experience was 5 gel tabs of LSD, which is like
Jesus
15 hits
Christ.
of acid. At 15 hits of acid as a 14-year-old kid, and I never came back the same.
Wow.
Like,
That's like
I,
crazy.
I know,
Like
I
I've
know,
done like 3 in a night,
I know.
but
It's
that's like
absolutely
crazy.
insane. But it blew me open, and I was able to see energy, and it
Yeah.
cracked me open from the Mormon programming that I was indoctrinated in as a child,
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest that to anyone, but I always went to like these massive extremes. Um,
Yeah. Me too. Me too. Some of these people too on the streets. Another thing I learned was the fear.
hmm,
Like most of the time, what I'm talking about, they didn't speak of, but there was something like they were so, just fearful of anyone, like a dog that's been kicked too much, and you walk in the room and it's kind of cowered in the corner. Like
traumatized.
I saw a lot of that, and I was in fear, but I didn't know it. And I was working my way out of it real quick, but I realized, I started to realize how deep that stuff goes.
It
Like
stays
you,
with you too.
yeah, like these things that were imprinted, early in our life. I mean, or a single event like the guy I was telling you about with his wife dying or whatever. What was beneath that? What
Mm.
was it that drove him to go homeless by choice when he lived in the best neighborhood in Houston, Texas? Son of I think like the founder of an oil company. And but like, what was beneath that? What was beneath him not being able to handle that? I mean, so there was something else, no different than like, you're obviously very familiar with AA, but
Mhm.
it's the addiction is just a symptom of something else, right? And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We haven't spent a lot of time looking at the something else, and I think that's what you're doing, and what you're talking about with some of these initiatives that
Mhm.
social organizations or the public government is coming out with.
Yeah. What you just shared reminded me of when I was homeless. I stayed on the streets with this man, this gentleman named, he went by 8 Ball.
Oh
And
God.
yeah, but it wasn't a drug reference actually. It was because he was good at pool when he was young.
Okay.
But he was in Desert Storm. So he
Hmm.
was a bit older than me, but he was in Desert Storm, and he had actually, in war shot a 14-year-old kid, and he
Yeah.
died.
Yeah.
And that traumatized him on such a level that he just went deep into addiction and homelessness.
Yeah.
And I stuck kind of close to him because he was safe and he respected me, and he like kept me safe in some pretty sticky situations. But
Yeah.
every time Every time it always goes back to trauma. As part of my job, I show up at these camps and I do something called a vulnerability intake form. And I ask the homeless people, the homeless population, this person, I would come up to you, Todd, and I would say, I'm going to ask you some really personal questions, Todd.
Mm.
And I need you to be really honest with me. So it's going to maybe, confront your street mentality of wanting not to be honest about this, but it's important that you do. And I asked them questions like, have you ever been sexually assaulted? Have you ever been tricked to do something you don't want to do? Have you ever, are you using drugs? Are you sharing needles? Have you ever, um, these questions are highly personal.
Mm.
Do you have a mental disorder? Do you have, a chronic illness? And it gauges their vulnerability. And depending on how high they score, they can qualify for housing vouchers.
Wow.
And there's a whole, there's a lot of other elements to it, but that's part of my job. I show up there and I show them that photo of me, my mugshot, and I say, this is where I've been. Like,
Yeah.
and it creates instant rapport.
Yeah.
They're like, oh shit. And then I can usually get them to open up and get their score high enough so that they can, qualify. I just
Righteous.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, because another thing I picked up from interacting in that environment was that these people had a very simplified life, and it may sound crazy to us, but I'm going to eat something, I'm going to survive today, I'm going to get high if that's what they do.
Yeah. They have
But
animals a lot of the time.
what's that?
They have animals a lot of the time. That's how they take care of something and love something,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
helps keep people alive.
yeah, yeah, and and you could just tell that the distortion from their life, they just turned, right? They just went. And that's where because some of these people you talk to, they don't want to change. They're good where they're at. I remember meeting this couple in New York City, and it was a husband and wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I started giving, because I didn't have anything, but I'd go to Dunkin' Donuts to get $2 tacos and $1 coffee. And
Tacos at Dunkin' Donuts?
yeah, they had the little, well, I think they don't call them tacos though. They're just a little tortilla, little small tortilla with a piece of cheese and egg in it. It was like $1, New York City in the Bronx. And there was this dude named Matthew, and he would sit in front of the Dunkin' Donuts. So I started talking to him, and found out that he was married, and that he had a wife, and that she worked another section, and that their whole story. I don't remember what it was, but they loved each other very much. They were living on this under a lean-to in the back of a building. They knew the people that managed the building.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and he was really articulate and well put together. It was really strange, and I think he even had like a white collar job. And I don't know what happened, but
Interesting.
like they were just. I remember talking to him one day, and I gave him a couple bucks, and I was talking to him, and he was like, "Man, we're just happy we made it this far. We're happy to have each other. We love each other. We have faith, and we're not thinking about getting an apartment. we're not. We're just trying to kind of like ground into what we have, and but the level of gratitude that this dude had was like trippy.
Mhm.
I'm like, wow. People think they got problems. I mean, I would love to have that, that at the time, because I was pretty scattered still. But when you meet people and they're just like they're just good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, and other times people are really stuck in their story of being a victim.
Absolutely.
And so, I can help them get onto case management, and, they can go through the process and get the vouchers and get, a permanent housing situation all ready to go. And then, you know what? Some people, they freeze and all their shit comes up and they don't feel worthy of it.
Right.
And then what happens if I actually have something to lose? That's scary, to have something to lose, to have
Yeah.
a place to call home. They think that they want it, and they do, but are they ready for it? Sometimes not. And more people than you would think actually walk away and leave that situation.
No, I would understand. I
Or
would
they
understand.
get an apartment and then they don't sleep in the apartment
Yeah.
because they don't even know how to be housed, and they go sleep
Exactly.
in the backyard.
Right. Right. And that worthiness thing, right?
Exactly.
Like I remember I was in rehab, and everybody smoked cigarettes in rehab, and I was smoking anyway. But and this one dude, he would go pick up all the cigarette butts, and he would take all the tobacco out and roll his own cigarettes. And so I walked up to him a couple times, and I said, you want a cigarette? And I think he took the first one. And the second time I came, he was like, I'm still going to do this. Like the reaction was, I guess what you're saying too is like, I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
Why are you being nice to me? And this is what I was talking about, the fear thing. The fear thing that I probably didn't explain very well, but like you would try to reach out,
Mhm.
and they would be suspicious, like, what do you want?
Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. What do you're going to take advantage of me. You're trying to, hurt me. Yeah.
And again, does this mirror us in our path? Are we running into this stuff? Have we run into this stuff? Is it any different than what they're going through? And therefore, are we not the same that they are, really and truly?
Yeah.
I mean, in the spectrum of things, I mean, how many people come to you? How many of us have learned, not to take shots because we're all in this together, but like people come to you and they say one thing, but their energy's saying another thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we develop we develop prejudices and suspicions and patterns, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of breaking out of it. But it's there, and I don't know. This is fascinating, but like with the work you're doing, because I'm just sitting here trying to put myself in your shoes, because I guess it's all about self-empowerment, right? Like, do you see where you might be able to reach people in not explaining the mechanics of it, but just like through your energy, through your work, where they become self-reliant, self-respectful to themselves, the love quotient goes up, like, because I think that's a big factor out there. There's not a whole lot of compassion sent their direction, really.
Yeah, my role is really unique and amazing. They call it here a peer support specialist. It's a certification you go, and you have to have lived experience. It's like a lived experience expert is another way to call this role. But you have to have like lived experience of addiction, in my case, homelessness as well, and then like, steady recovery from it. And so the way that I go in with my role is I lead with that all the time. And other people who do this work don't necessarily have the experience, or if they do, they don't lead with it. But I lead with it all the time.
Yeah.
And I let people know, I meet them where they're at, and I do my best not to judge them.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not somebody who is an activist or something for medical assisted treatment. But if I can get someone who's shooting up dope to get on a once monthly Vivitrol shot or a Subuclane shot, that way their medications aren't stolen from them like everything else is, or traded, or like all this street stuff kind of, stops. So if I can get somebody on stable medication and in support groups, like that's a huge win. So for me, it's all about harm reduction, opposed to like, you need to be abstinent or your recovery's bullshit.
Right. It's all on you.
Yeah.
That's pretty harsh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest, I don't know how to say this. Well, okay. On my path, even in those first 2 years that I was waking up and having these divine episodes and all these things happening, the ability to get up, put your boots on, dust your butt off after you, I guess, for all intents and purposes, relapse. Because to me, I mean, I had hundreds of relapses, because the relapse wasn't just the usage, but like I said earlier, the usage turned me into somebody else some of the time, enough of the time to where I ended up in situations that were not even on the radar. You know what I mean? So like, to be able to get up, and look yourself in the eye and say, okay, I'm going to do better today. I'm going to leave that behind. And of course, that takes time. And I'm not saying that it's just instantaneous, but that's, to me, would be like something that would be, I don't know, I would never thought about it, but it would be tough it would seem to be tough to teach. Like, how do you tell them, hey, I'm with you, you're sober, and then all of a sudden there's a relapse, and that must be a hell of a fall.
It happens. Yeah, I relapsed several times. I was a chronic relapser. And this conversation is like reminding me of my own journey out of homelessness into housing. And I've lived in the same apartment now for 4 years in March. I'll be housed 4 years in March now.
Wow. And how did that happen? I mean, did you meet someone like you that was helping out in the streets, that said, hey, answer these questions, or we can get you some housing? And did you have any relapse while you were in the housing?
Yeah. So when I was on the streets, I've told you this before, they weren't giving women without children Medicaid, which means government-assisted medical assistance or medical insurance to get in treatment, to get in sober living, these kind of things. I didn't have access to those things. They didn't have harm reduction or needle exchange in Provo, Utah when I was
Yeah.
there. They don't
Yeah.
even have a homeless shelter there. So I was just unsheltered on my own.
You were in Provo. I was in Provo in 2017 for 4 months.
Yeah.
Trippy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I was in a time loop. I was stuck in a time loop. They would pick me up off the streets, and they would take me to jail, and I would sober up for like 17 to 40 days, and they would drop me right back on the same street. And then in a few weeks, I would get arrested again and go back to jail. And it was like this time loop I couldn't break out of. It seriously was. For like a year, I got arrested 9 times in 1 year, just like back and forth and back and forth. It spit me back out. And I had no resources to help myself. And I wasn't a felon. I wasn't like doing criminal activity. So I wasn't getting wrapped up in the system enough for them to force me into anything either. So I was stuck in this limbo for a long time,
Yeah.
What happened was eventually I went to a sober living house in Salt Lake County, which was far enough away from Provo and from my siblings to get sober. And I was in that sober living for like 4 months. And a week before I graduated, I was just sitting there one day and I thought, I think I'm going to use today. And I just left everything I had built at that sober living, and I just got on the train and I went and I bought some meth. And I just relapsed just like that. Boom, just gone. No premeditation. It was really intense. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
But that relapse was when I experienced sexual, trauma for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And
Well,
I went into psychosis further than I had before at that point. And so I called the sober living and I begged them to take me back. And it took some time, but I ended up back there and I did the 4 months and graduated. Went to stay with some friends for a few months, and they had to sell their house suddenly. So all of a sudden I was going to be homeless again. So what happened, Todd, was some missionaries from the Mormon church actually caught wind of me and told this place in Salt Lake City called Welfare Square, which is all done by the Mormons. They have a bishop there. They have DI, Deseret Industries. They have place where they can help you get a job. And there's this lady back there in the office. And she was just like, you need to get a job and I'll put you in a hotel if you get a job. Because I don't want to send you to the homeless shelter. You have I had 5 months sober or something. She's like, I don't want to send you back to the streets and I don't want you to go to the homeless shelter. If you get a job, I'll put you in a hotel.
wow.
So she paid for this hotel for 3 months while I just went to work and went straight to the Alano Club and went to AA meetings. And that was my life. And this whole hotel was filled with people who used. All night long, I would hear my neighbors fighting over the pipe and screaming and domestic violence and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, I can do it just one day at a time, that whole thing. And she had me she gave me the opportunity to apply for affordable housing at a lot of these brand new apartment complexes all over America have something called affordable housing in them. It's a Section 42 tax credit from the government, meaning they can do 10% of all of the apartments for half of the rent. And to qualify, you have to just prove that you make twice as much as the rent a month and that you have steady income. Pass a background check, and that's it. And so it was Christmas Day, 2017, and the funding, the lady couldn't pay for my apartment anymore, or for the hotel room. And so I was going to be homeless again. And right then, this apartment called and was like, yeah, if you have $300, you can put down a deposit. We'll run your background and we'll get you in. Wow. And so I've just been here for 4 years. I didn't feel worthy of it for a really long time. I relapsed a year into living here and OD'd in the bathroom right there, was brought back by Northman.
By who?
by Narcan, that shot, the Narcan shot, which is
God damn.
all over the town, all over the city now.
Wow. Wow.
To outreach with as much as I can with harm reduction now and bring Narcan to people, clean needles, clean using kits. And
You must be making a name for yourself in the streets of Salt Lake City and with the organizations that you're working through.
I'm not sure. I'm so young and new to it. But if I were to establish myself, I'm sure that would happen in time. But I've only been doing this for like 6 months.
But still, the way you approach things, I know you take your lunch pail to work every day.
I sure do.
I know you hit the ground running. Your boots are tied up and straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said because, like, the way you said it, I'm gonna have to go back and cut it out and make a little clip. But like you said, you're healing, you're extending healing, and you're healing yourself. Like that's the Trinity energy. That's it. That's all there is to it. This. It's not even just the judgment. It's the ambivalence that we have that can't stand. It's not going to stand that 1 in 8 kids eats off of a dime a day. It's not going to stand that these people are basically on the outside with no empathy, no compassion, no real effort. For the most part. I mean, it sounds like there's been change since you've been on the streets in what I would consider a very conservative part of the country, and there are many. Not to take shots at the Mormons at all. There's good and bad and everything, but my point is you went from not being able to get WIC, which is basically extortion and persecution of people that we're talking about. You go from that to being on the front lines of offering people a way out, and not only that, but the taking a healthier, less harmful approach to getting them on the path to recovery, which is amazing.
It's really amazing. And even if I do move to a third world country like Costa Rica, I can still, like, in my own business, generate funds to help create other charities, create other nonprofits. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to dial it in, but I just really want to figure out exactly how I want to do it, So I'm still just exploring and discovering that right now.
There you go. Inspiration is 90% of manifestation, right? I mean, it's you're building the template. You're building your book of life, chapter 26 or whatever it is, right now.
Yeah.
Right now, it's conscious intent. It's happening till all over the place. Do you feel like that the energy is different for you individually or what you see collectively? Do you think it? What differences do you see between now and, let's say, 2 years ago when this whole COVID thing started?
Just for my life, for me?
Just your life, what you see with people. You made a comment earlier. A lot of people are waking up at the top of the show.
Oh my gosh. I just want to be careful of what words I use and how I say this because I don't want to have any disruption to the live. I'm not sure what the censoring is like.
Don't worry about it.
No?
We're good. No, we're good.
Okay.
We're protected. We've only had 2 videos removed. So one was David Icke. So, but I don't think the censorship is what it is, or what it was, which is part of the reason I'm asking you, because it seems like there's been, there was, like, for instance, there was like a lot of energy of suppression and presentation of distortion. Where you'd say, oh, you can't do this because the cops will come to your house and pick you up because that's what they're showing on YouTube or showing on the media. But it's like it's gone the other way. I don't know. Well, I don't know. You can say whatever you want, but like, what differences stand out for you from 2 years ago before this all started?
Well, I'm from a timeline that's very, very chaotic and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm able to talk so neutrally or naturally about everything I've been through is because it's so normalized from the timeline I'm from. Just total destruction and chaos. And when I got sober, things really chilled out. But in 2020, it's like this big wave of chaos came through. And it was like I was back on the chaos timeline, or, the dark timeline. Little remnants of destruction was everywhere, And I feel like the people that I do know who have gotten sick are actually the ones who were forced to pause, and like the brain fog actually helped them move from their brain to their heart or to their intuition. Some of them more consciously than others,
Mm-hmm.
but they're accessing information differently because
Mm-hmm.
of that, and the
Yeah.
things that different populations are forced to do, or what we are being fed from the mainstream media as truth, is so blatantly a different narrative than what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Little by slowly, people are beginning to recognize this,
Yeah.
you know? You know?
And it makes you wonder, how long has this shit been going on? You know what I mean? Because if you look back at, and I have no political affiliation whatsoever, but if you look back at the election, and even the one before that, uh, nobody, they'd have the cameras on when they would show the crowd at Hillary's rallies or Biden's rallies. Let's just stay with Biden. There was nobody there. There was like 15 people there. And then you go to Trump, and there's all these people. Now, I think we made the right choice energetically as souls.
Huh.
Franco would say that 10 days before that election, we haven't picked are we going to go blue or red, because if we go red, it's going to take a little bit longer. If we go blue, it's going to be a
Yeah,
little bumpier, but the
interesting.
truth's going to come out faster. But my
That's
point is how the hell did 80 million people vote for this dude when nobody even showed up for the rallies? So like what was presented,
it's
you
trippy.
have to question, no different than 9/11. And now we're talking about this virus and
Yeah.
mandates. Now you're seeing all these change of direction. I saw a meme the other day, and it said, pretty soon you're going to hear doctors saying, well, nobody told you you had to take it. It was your choice. I
Ooh.
thought, man, I hope to God people don't start saying that, because there's going to be some mad people. But at the same time, you
Yeah.
look at these these whatever you call them, these gatherings, Ottawa, Canberra, and one thing that's coming through is these people are not angry in the sense that they're out of control with their emotions. These people are there in peace with an open heart and saying, "Hey, man, let's just chill and be real here, okay? But
Mhm.
this can't go on," kind of thing. So that's kind of, to me, indicative of maybe what's going on that we haven't seen either, is the strength and the soul in people.
Mm. Yeah.
I guess they're connected at the hip.
It's really interesting to be a frontlines worker during the midst of all of this as well, and wearing a mask, all day and all that kind of stuff, which I have to find neutrality around, or I would really hate my job.
Yeah.
Feel really imposed upon, and I personally don't want to wear it. you know.
Yeah, but the fact that you can, and even the people, I know people, I've had people come on the show and they've gotten the jab. It's not about any of this. It's about uh well, again, stay in your own lane. I mean, how do I not know that another person doesn't have the capacity to take something on? Because I could do it. If they told me, hey, you can go to Australia tomorrow, you got to take a jab, I'd be like, okay. Now I would work with that chemical
Sure.
compound. I would work with my guides, my angels, whatever. And I would say, my intention's right. So how do I not know that somebody, what they're capable of? I mean, we're all the same, so it's like, but to be able to do that, and do it in balance without a charge, I think says a lot.
Yeah. For a long time, Spirit was telling me, uh, the message of alchemizing the vax.
Yeah.
Alchemize it. And when it came up, and it was never in front of me to even consider what I or what I not, but it came like right up in front of me in my job, like, you know, this is in front of you. Are you going to do it? And it
Right.
could have gone any way. I was like, oh, I'm sure spirit will say, do it and alchemize it, neutralize it. You're fine. But when it came in front of me, spirit said, don't do it, which made my life really complex for a minute there because I wasn't sure if they were going to mandate it at my job.
Mm-hmm.
They actually couldn't do. Ultimately, the state of Utah, decided that that's not a thing here. But it was really sticky there for a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm actually paid. My grant that I work on is a vaccine grant. So I am employed through a grant from the government that is a vaccine grant. Twice a week, I do vaccine outreach to the homeless population. I'm
Right.
not vaccinated. Not because, just honestly, for me, it's because I don't want to put anything in my body.
I'm the
Uh,
same.
I like
I'm
to
the
stay
same.
really as clean as possible. I mean, I just quit coffee. I'm really like cleaning up
I
as much.
saw that.
Yeah. So I don't want to put anything in there really. I'm not supercharged either way, but I have to stay neutral. I'll be sitting in the middle of this, vaccine event, and people are getting vaccinated. I'm wearing a mask. I see people vaccinated all the time. And just to feel neutral, unconditional love and non-judgment for all of it is alchemizing it.
You're
It's just
damn right it
the
is. You're
way that I
damn.
thought it would be. Yeah.
I mean, that's a classic example of what we and I think again there's a direct relationship between the programming of COVID and everything that came with it, all the sub programs and all the other stuff. But there's this awareness that we have of ourselves now, that these little things that we do, these mundane things at our job or at our club or whatever the case is, we don't understand, or we're starting to understand that we actually are holding light there. So
Mhm.
imagine you are the rainbow sheep energy in a gathering of, like you're talking about, and look at it, step outside the body and look at what's happening there. I mean, it's either going to get, an energy that's in the vast minority like that's either going to get crushed, or it's going to be the impetus for the real contagion, the soul expansion,
I don't
chi
I don't
energy.
say anything about it ever. I don't ever say anything about it. I
Yeah.
don't try to change anyone's mind. I don't try to convince anyone. Nobody even knows that I
Yeah,
live.
but your neutrality is what I'm saying is your superpower.
Yeah.
Your empathy, your devotion, your intention, your neutrality is energetically transformational.
It is. It
Uh,
is energetically heard.
Absolutely, it is. There's no
Mhm.
doubt. There's no doubt at all. And I think there's a lot of that going on. And I think there's a lot of it going on outside of these communities and these circles, and people are doing in their own way that are focused on the inner circle of their lives, their vocation with attunement to their self, to thine own self be true, their family, their children, so on and so on, that don't really get into these types of discussions that actually are holding down the fort, let's just say,
Yeah.
through their personal integrity to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool when we go to a camp or we do an event in a homeless shelter and people are really happy we're there. I go out with the health department twice a week and offer vaccines to people. And a lot of times they're really happy that that resource is available. And, if they want it, that's great. And if not, that's cool too. It's just like medical assisted treatment or anything else. I look at it exactly the same. It's not for me, but that doesn't mean I can't support you. And if it's for you, same
Yeah,
exact
and
feeling.
who knows? Because really, before anything, there's energy.
Mhm.
So we can talk about GMOs and fluorides and all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
But if a soul is illuminated and kind of in a state of fortification, self-awareness, self-introspection, it works on themselves, continues to try to expand, and continues to try to raise their level of integrity, doesn't flatline, there would be an argument that they could be impervious to many things
Sure.
You just
Sure.
think of the placebo effect. Think of the placebo effect. Somebody's on the streets. They've had a bad run, a binge, something, I don't know, whatever. Somebody comes around, and it may just be the fact that this person makes an overture of grace, of I care about you. Do you want this? That could be energetically start flipping their DNA. Who
Yeah.
knows? You don't know. So it's the intentions that matter.
Yeah, it
It
is.
really is.
Yeah, it's bringing unconditional love and non-judgment to the space. If it's
That's right.
offering vaccines, if it's offering, treatment, if it's offering, housing, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's the same vibration that you want to hold for people.
Offering humanity.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, and they say, okay, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, I think that's part of the equation is examining what am I doing? And am I neutral? Do I have a charge? Do I have like extreme conviction? Somebody's going to be wrong, and based on what I'm doing, or I'm correcting. I mean, this is more about. I saw something the other day. I shared the post or the meme, and it said, "Don't offer a lecture when you can offer a hug, or
Yeah.
to someone that needs a hug."
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
kindness is like music. It's universal. Like, you get it. Everybody gets it. It's not like something that you got to prove out. It's there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what's the road to heaven paved with then?
Same thing.
If not good intentions.
Same thing. It's just the same thing. It really is. It is, and here we are, duality. We can look what you're doing. I didn't know the extent of what you're doing, but even to go to a meeting, even to gain some level of abundance from something that I'm not going to do, whatever, like you are, but to sit in that space, I mean,
I love it.
that's yeoman's work. I mean, that's I could see. I don't know what I would do, right? Like that's the whole point. Like, Todd, what would you do? Go sit in that space. Well, I won't know till I get confronted with that same, say, energetic template or whatever. But yeah, the bottom line is you're not in judgment. You're in neutrality. You're
Yeah.
not. You don't have an axe to grind. You're trying to apply the wisdom you've learned through the knowledge you've gained and the action that you've combined with that, and share it from your heart, and to heal and to be healed. Your words, which is the shift.
Yeah,
The real
growing up as in the Mormon culture and then getting sober in AA, those are very dogmatic kind of programs.
Mm-hmm.
And releasing the identity of all of it, like the survivor, the victim, those games,
Yeah.
the addict, and the identity around the homeless, all of that. My gift, really, my healing gift, really, is to be open-minded. And so it makes sense that I would choose to come in and to be programmed in such a dogmatic Orthodox religion as the only truth.
Right.
And then you go through AA, which is very dogmatic. This is the only way, you're an addict for life.
Right.
And then to release all of that, that's where the gift is. That's where all the juice is.
Yeah.
And I sit in AA meetings all the time and just love it. I love the group for where they are. I love to visit. It can't take me any further, but I love to come and visit,
Yeah. And it is. The fact that you can do that. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about it, thinking the ones I went to, and I'm like, man, I was not. Most of the time, I was in resistance from an unconscious superiority, like from an arrogance, right? That line between arrogance and confidence where you want to stay in the space in between. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's you're not trying to change anyone. You're what you're doing is you're you're offering them something, and you're not going to be, get too high, get too low based on the answers they give you. You know, you respect their path, and that's. I know this sounds like new age stuff, but we spend a lot of time talking on this show, and there's a lot of other platforms. But this stuff is really simple. Can you be kind? Can you be kind?
Mm-hmm.
Can you forgive? Is there anyone you haven't forgiven? Have you forgiven your? I mean, these questions, it seem like they're like, again, they're just very human, very mundane. Oh, this isn't going to make a difference. Oh, if I get rid of this prejudice, is the world going to be better? Well, you're damn right it is. You better believe it. And there's a lot to be said too for what you're talking about with the Mormons,
Mm-hmm.
because I never spent any time up there, and when I went up there for the 4 months in Provo,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had some situations, two situations I can think of with Mormon people,
Yeah.
and I just didn't know. I thought, oh wow. I mean, I grew up in a Roman Catholic, conservative, Latin, and so there was a lot of shame and blame, and you're going to burn in hell and all that. But to my point is, you're a product of that environment,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things I did figure out once I left there and got a little more familiar with Salt Lake City in particular, they're just like everyone else.
Yeah.
You see Amish, you see articles about Amish kids that get into these types of situations. So nobody is excluded.
Mm.
None of them worked, but things within them work. I mean, I remember going to a Mormon. What do you call it? Zones? Are they zones or like
Ward.
ward? I went to a ward party, and the lady I lived with, the two ladies I lived with went. They weren't Mormons. They were pretty big in the community. They provided some jobs, but they
Mm.
knew everybody, and they were treated with the utmost respect. And I was too. I'm this long-haired hippie going to
Cool.
this ward meeting with the barbecue and the, but yeah, people are people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love diversity so much.
Hmm.
I love diversity so much. I love people who are different than me, think differently than me, different backgrounds, different culture, different races. I love people who are just real,
Hmm.
and if we don't need to change each other, that's a beautiful space to be in.
Right.
We
Each
don't
his
have
own.
to, yeah.
Each his own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the diversity is it's a strength. The experience of diversity is a strength. Malcolm X used to say, uh, what did he say? He would read. Of course, he was Muslim,
Yeah.
but he read the Bible. He read the Quran, Torah. He would educate himself on what the opposing uh, thoughts or beliefs were, or people that oppose him. He would read that stuff, and he would get to know that um, that other, or let's just say that opposite energy,
Mm-hmm.
which says a lot too.
Yeah.
Open-mindedness to me. I mean, if I had to pick one word, I think we use love a lot, but I think for me in my own journey, that the number one word is open-mindedness, being
Mm-hmm.
open to. That's why I love in our private message that you made the heart black, because the shadow, the darkness has actually been a bigger springboard, because we all think we're light. I
Mm,
mean,
I love
we
the
all, yeah. The shadow is just an amazing. To me, it is the holy darkness. It's the mother's womb, because we've all been in that void, and there's nothing that can replace that moment when your mortality is in question, to say the least, and you're just like, what the hell is the truth? And she's always there holding your hand. That's for sure. I know you've had those moments.
The darkness is what has made me who I am. It's
Hmm.
the adversity and the pain and the hardship of life, especially people my age and your age, these newer beings, they didn't come in to suffer, these new babies.
Mm-mm.
But people like myself, like I came in to suffer.
Yeah.
I agreed to that.
Yeah.
And through that suffering, like my gift was ignited and initiated. And not that I'm fully there yet, it's a forever unfolding, but the wisdom, the codes that I carry to share, it can't be read in a book. Like it's that lived experience that the wisdom's activated. And same with you. One of the most sacred things that I adore about you, Todd, is your darkness and your weirdness.
Gracias.
I love that about you.
I accept that. And I'm kicking myself because there's been a lot of changes. Obviously this has been like a huge gift these last 2 years. I mean, it's such a catalyzing set of energetic frequencies to then open things up in ourselves and so on and so on. But I'm kicking myself about 2 weeks ago in the last 2 weeks. I was in this space of like, I unfriended 4 people.
Ooh.
And I don't do that. I don't block people. I don't unfriend people. And I was at this whole place of, am I not respecting their shadow? Because I'm at a point now where I look at the shadow in other people and I go, that's why if it was a gift to me when I found my own, why wouldn't it be a gift to me when I see a mirror of it?
Yeah.
And so I was like, and 4 people, I probably will send a message to one of them and say, hey, I effed up, because I learned something just like this morning. Telling that guy, let's do a show. I'd like to know how you feel if you're going to be an antagonist in this group all the time. And to his credit, he didn't answer me. And then to see the meme that says, hey, don't be concerned about what I'm doing. Be concerned about why you're concerned about what I'm doing. And this is me. This is what I just did. So, and again, the value of waking up on the streets after a living hell the night before and being able to put it behind you and get past the self-judgment and get back to work, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, it's okay. Like for me, it's okay if I want to unfriend someone or block someone for a minute. If I need space, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I have to be really compassionate to myself these days. Like a lot of my healing right now comes from being really gentle and compassionate to myself.
Yeah.
And it's okay if, like, I have a few of my siblings blocked right now, and that's okay. And that's okay. Because I know that I want to be better and that I have a really high level of ownership. And if I need space to step back and to see that clearly, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have recognized that over the years I would do that and not understand that I'm going to come back to it.
exactly.
Just like I know I'm going to come back to these 4, but I'm not ready to do that. I've been working a lot for a while, quite a while. It's actually since I was in Provost when I started it in 2017, working with energy with intent specific to people and situations that I was involved with. And I've had some success in my mind with it. But like these types of things that have come up, which are huge gifts at this time, because whatever's coming up at this time is highly significant, highly the high potential if we can find the gold. And so I feel like I can sit with it when I'm ready, and that'll be where I start the energetics of it, which is an exercise I do a lot with people and things. But I know one thing: I'm not ready to have a conversation. I can't. I don't even know. I wouldn't even know where. I just couldn't say. I wouldn't do it justice. There's too much patterning and imprint. Like an imprint of previous behaviors and thoughts, and I'm just not there yet.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think like for me, just that's okay, and not needing to push or feel obligated or feel guilty or resentful or any of that, but just the space of it's okay heals and clears so much.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, which I believe is really the same thing, is the built-in obligation that I've got to do something because somebody did something, or I've
Mm,
got to do something because society that's well mannered, or whatever the case is. Like something's going on with that. Like something's going on with somebody asked me to do something. I'm like, no, I don't want to. Somebody wrote me the other day because I don't answer a lot of messages. I
mhm.
can't. I just can't do it. It
Totally.
makes me go crazy, right? I mean, and somebody that I've known has been on the show a few times sends me a note and says whatever it was. I didn't open it. Yeah. And then I get another one, and again, things are presented right when you need them, right?
Mhm.
And I see, how the notifications pop up on your phone. You can see them
Yeah.
for a second, and it said, "I just realized that you were not answering my messages. Is there a problem?" And I went back and I opened it because I knew the universe was calling on me. And I went back and actually counted. There was 19 messages. No, they were like videos and
Wow. Mhm.
attachments, and but I never opened them. 19. So I wrote back and um, I said, no, nothing's wrong. I don't really answer messages. I do the best I can.
Yeah.
All blessings to you. And to their credit, they just said okay. And I
Cool.
thought, wow, that was cool. Like that was all right. It was okay to say the truth.
Yeah.
You're capable of it. But we've had these built-in things where, and it could be something like always opening the door for a woman. Like
Mm.
I'm from the South. I think that's just the way it is. But then you start thinking, well, wait a minute. Why are you doing this? Like not to do it, but just like, are you doing it from the right place? Are you,
Totally.
you know what I mean? Are you involved? Because I mean, I think you could do it both ways, and be okay. What anyway? Yeah, just a lot of deep microscopic self introspection going on for a lot of people.
Mhm. Super self-curious. What's
Yeah,
going on here? Why am I doing this? Where's this coming from? Where
yeah,
does this cord lead? When did this start? You know,
yes,
a lot of
yes.
times in childhood, most times.
Like, why do I do this?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, like it's okay. I always say this all the time. People get sick of it, but I feel like you're a kid. You go into a toy room. Some toys you just want to play with, and some toys you never look at.
Mhm.
And that's how I look at it. It's okay for me to hang with my tribe or in my hood or whatever you want to call it. Um, just because it's just me, I don't need to like explain. It's not that I don't like you, or it's not about that. It's just like, hey, I'll be right there for you like I would anyone else. But when I'm going to be hanging out is in my home frequency, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, being authentic is really important.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but vulnerability, authenticity lead to transparency, and I think to me, transparency, like Todd coming on with dots all over his face and DNA scars. But like really, I mean, it's like the transparency is the shit. I mean, that's it. But now, am I transparent every moment? Are you transparent? No, we're working our way out of this. Is the soul transparent in other dimensions? Are we transparent in other dimensions? Uh, Based on our experience that we've shared and we've had, I think so. There's full blown telepathy. I don't know too many people that have had an ET apparition or an angel or an elemental where the lips were moving.
Hmm.
What does
Hmm.
that tell you, right?
It's
So
true.
I feel your energy. You know, you read my energy as soon as we came on. I mean, it's energy doesn't lie. I think the biggest challenge is getting used to our natural nature, where integrity doesn't have to be as consciously considered because it's just the way you are.
Hmm.
And yeah, compassion, empathy, yeah, mind, body, soul, mind, body, spirit. Well, it's good seeing you, girl.
I
It's good
appreciate
seeing
it.
you. Yeah. Maybe I'll swing around to Utah sometime this year. I don't even know. I can't even think past today. I'm glad we did this on Saturday. You
Me
know,
too.
I'm just have been trying to keep the weekends open, but yeah, I'm glad that we got to spend an hour and a half together. I didn't realize it was an hour and a half till like 2 minutes ago. I thought I was in an hour yet, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's what happens when you're like
in the
this.
zone. Yeah. Thanks for taking the Saturday to do this with me. It works out way better for me
That's
with my
cool.
schedule and
Yeah,
stuff. So awesome.
yeah,
I,
right on, no problem. And I love you and thank you for the work you're doing because it's far, it is close to my heart because of my own experience. But you know, again, it's just another example of the little things that we do in comparison to what we think, like say things that are happening where millions and millions of people are watching. Uh, these are the things that are creating this new experience. So thank you on behalf of everybody for what you're doing.
I love you, Todd.
Love you too. You take care.
I'll see you soon.